1 week season.
OWS fam, the nation, my dudes and dudettes, welcome back. If you missed part one of this will be part two. If you missed part one, check the YouTube format. We talked the biggest differences in rankings between Mike Johnson and myself, irrespective of format. So today, we're going to get into those formats. We're going to talk drafters. We're going to talk underdog. We're going to talk DraftKings and kind of what those different formats mean as far as our player projections and rankings. So without further ado, let's bring him in. Mike, good to see you. New background, dude. Let's go.
Yep, traveled quickly, left
Yeah.
the pool. Now I'm up in the mountains. Reception's still good though, so we'll be ready to roll.
Nice, dude. The last time we spoke, we talked a lot about the differences in our rankings. We talked Justin Jefferson, we talked CMC, we talked Tyreek, DJ Moore, Bucky Irving, Chris Olave. So now I want to get into some of the format things. What differences, what adjustments can we make based on the format that we're playing? And we know drafters, full point PPR. We know big stuff like that. Underdog, we get 0.5 PPR. DraftKings, we have the bonuses come back into play. But what does that mean to us? How do we put those things into action? How much of a material difference does that really make when we are talking about these player takes, when we're talking about these player rankings? So I want to throw it over to you. Talk to me real quick about the format of drafters. You're the drafters guy at 1 week season. So talk to me about the format of drafters, what adjustments we make, and kind of some of the players that we are either higher, lower, or away from consensus because of those adjustments.
Right. So drafters is cumulative scoring, as you mentioned. So it's 17 weeks. It is just one leaderboard, right? It is different than the playoff style format where you have you draft with 12 people, and for 14 weeks, it's just all you have to worry about is beating 10 of the other 11, and you move on to the playoffs. And then it's kind of just a race to the finish weekly, hoping for spike weeks and whatnot. So kind of your target is very different in terms of on drafters. Cumulative scoring is just a very different animal in terms of, in order to just cash, you are against everybody else. And you're really looking for, so two things. You're looking for your overall upside. You actually have to be over 17 weeks, like the best team. One of the things I love about drafters is you don't, after 14 weeks, everybody starts at 0 in the playoff formats.
Yeah.
So you don't, you could have this absolute unit of a team. And if week 15 or 16, they just happen to have their worst or second worst week of the season that falls in that week, like it's dead. Like that's the end of it. Like, so on drafters, it every week is the same or counts the same. So a big score in week 1, a big first half of the season is just as important as a big second half of the season. So that's kind of the big difference. And we get into how to approach that and the strategy angles and how to handle a lot of the ADP things and roster construction in the premium. A little bit with the basics package. We have our best ball basics package with some written works that's available for $29. You can get the rankings for each of the formats as well with that. But then in our best ball plus, we really dive into the deep strategy and thought processes behind how we're approaching these things. I took 6th in this or 7th, 2 years ago in this format. So it's kind of become my baby, and the thing I've like really dove into is how I did that, confirm some things with my approach entering that season, but then also have adjusted on a few things as we've gotten data. I've gone through the historical contests. So with all that said, the first guys that I'm going to talk about that I give a boost to on drafters that I'm not really very high on when you look at them on DraftKings, and I play a little bit on Underdog as well. But on drafters, kind of segueing that recent discussion, some of these veteran backs, you look at guys like Alvin Kamara, James Conner, who are, fifth or sixth round picks. Often they'll fall into like the sixth round. And it's one of the things that I've found on drafters can be kind of an advantage is, frankly, it is like the other, the third child,
The other guys.
ugly duckling,
Yeah.
that people don't put as much thought or deep dive into. So I think that across the industry, there's a lot of like, oh, it's full PPR. It's similar to DraftKings. You can kind of copy paste. People think through, and the rankings often don't reflect the uh, format differences. And I think guys like James Conner and Alvin Kamara, I'm not super in the playoff style formats. I'm not that confident that these running backs that are approaching 30, I think they might, at least Connor turns 30 during the season. I don't know.
Mhm.
Kamara's really close. He's at like 29. I don't know his birthday offhand, but you look at that Saints situation as well. Who knows what team Kamara is even playing on late in the season? So it's hard to invest that type of draft capital in those guys when weeks 15 through 17 carry so much weight. But on drafters, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that those guys are going to enter the season as engines of their offenses. These teams are going to protect them throughout the preseason and training camp. And they're going to put everything they can handle on their plate to start the year. So, a great first 6, 7, 8 weeks to the season, even if they taper off a little bit or get injured at some point, those big weeks early in the season are just as important as late. So, those guys in particular are kind of fit that mold. There are some other guys as well that you could make a similar argument for, but Connor and Kamara are probably the most expensive guys that I'm probably have the greatest discrepancy in terms of how I approach, how I approach and see their profiles varies drastically across the two sites. Looks like we lost Hilow. He's been having some internet stuff. I can just roll right along because this is the drafters section anyways. But with that said, kind of segueing into these next guys. So the Washington Commanders backfield. So Brian Robinson, I have him ranked 78th overall on drafters. Hilow has him 105th on Underdog. And then Austin Eckler, I have 149 on drafters. And Hilow has him at 179 on Underdog. I would guess that a lot of that for him is you look at like weekly upside in those playoff style formats. And you can make it, you can definitely, I see the argument against them or why, you could be very low on that Washington backfield in the single week format, just because Jaden Daniels is there to take potential rushing upside on a weekly basis. But I think this is going to be a very good offense. And I think that it's rare that we have an offense that explodes late in the season the way the Commanders did and kind of takes off, has this, dynamic end to the season, really. And Jaden Daniels, could be even better in his second season. So this running backs, there's the great running backs don't matter debate, or, that statement was made, and then all the idea behind that philosophy. But really what it comes down to is that running backs are highly dependent on situation. And I think that the Commanders' offensive situation is going to be very good. And so Eckler and Robinson are both guys that I am buying, there's going to be production from this backfield, and I can get access to it for very cheap. So, getting usable weeks, getting consistent like 15 to 20 points from one of those guys. I would guess that a lot of weeks are going to have at least one guy put up 15 to 20 point type score. So they're currently available, and like the Robinson's like an 8th or 9th round pick, and Eckler is available in like the 12th or 13th. So that's a situation that I am looking to target as well. Then we have Will Shipley, right? So looking at things from a different perspective, Will Shipley is, his ADP is around the 15th, 16th round across sites. I'm relatively high on him. I have Will Shipley ranked 161st in my drafters rankings. And once we get to a certain point in the draft at the running back position, we also have to look at player profiles and how those archetypes fit into the cumulative scoring. So for Shipley, he's a guy who, if you are looking to win, welcome back.
Yo, right.
If I'm just rolling along, we're good.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
on to Will Shipley. If you're looking at, once you get past a certain point, there are two different kind of profiles of backs. And there are a lot of backs who, if you look at a season-long projection and what their role looks like and who they are, it's like, okay, this guy is he might project for a ton, double the points of Will Shipley. He might project for 150 points and Will Shipley might project for 75. But when you think about an NFL season and cumulative scoring format, for me, Will Shipley is a guy who, in order for him to pay off on DraftKings or Underdog, you need Saquon Barkley to get hurt, basically, because Shipley's not going to just get like 30, 40% like you see some RB2s get. He's going to spell Barkley or play in blowouts unless Barkley is hurt. On DraftKings or Underdog, he can help you, obviously, at any point if he were to be thrust into that starting role. But really, for him to really pay off and be worth kind of reaching for, it would have to come in that perfect window late in the season. Otherwise, that little boost you get isn't quite as important. Whereas on drafters, for me, a guy like Shipley, Saquon could miss, what is the Eagles' bye week? Is it week 9?
Yeah.
I think it's 9. Say Saquon turns his ankle in week 4 or 5, and they decide just to be conservative with him, and he sits out the next 3 or 4 games, and Shipley is the guy, and he has just an awesome stretch there. Those 4 weeks, similar to the arguments I made for Kamara and Connor, those early season weeks are equally as important across the contest. So, I think from that standpoint, I'm extra high on him on drafters because you're not having to parlay it where it's like, we need Barkley to miss time, and it has to be during this window to really get paid off. If Shipley, and I'm assuming at this point that he had that 70-yard run in the playoffs last year. I was pretty high on him coming into last season. Kenneth Gainwell is gone. So to me, it's like a clear handcuff situation. And the offense, similar to what I just talked about with Brian Robinson and Eckler, just a very, very strong offense, and one that the running back production is going to come behind that offensive line, playing with Hurts and the receivers. And I don't need to parlay it with, I need Saquon to miss time, and it has to be at the end of the season. It can come at any point in the season. And we can get 4 or 5 usable weeks out of Shipley, which are highly valuable if you're trying to chase the top of the leaderboard there.
Yeah, and there's other guys. That's a really sharp shout for the format. Other guys too that are in there. Jalen Wright in Miami, Marshawn Lloyd in Green Bay, even Keaton Mitchell in Baltimore, who would probably take over kind of the lead running back role. They're not going to have Justice Hill kind of be the between the tackles guy. Those guys on like high-powered offenses that are still valuable in an Underdog playoff style format, like Underdog or DraftKings, but like a little bit more so on drafters. I like that shout a good bit.
And I think a lot of people think of it backwards in that terms as well, because I think a lot of people think, well, cumulative scoring, like there's this guy's going to have a bunch of zeros. That's going to hurt me. I'd rather have this guy that's like consistently score. He's getting 8 to 10 points every week all season. But the reality is, like, we talk about it 1 week season throughout our DFS and our inner circle, like in the regular season, like we're playing these contests for first place. Right. Mm-hmm. So like those guys who are getting you 8 to 10 points every week consistently, that doesn't give you much value, because if you're taking their scores on a weekly basis, like you're not winning the tournament.
Yeah.
So it's kind of it's kind of works on an inverse from how I think a lot of people approach it, in terms of uh, from early in in the earlier in the draft with guys like Kamara and Connor. um, their their kind of consistency and what they could do early in the season matters a bit more, and I think people focus on that consistency late on drafters because they think of, well, we have to get points, but it's when and how those points are scored. I'd rather have 100 points from Shipley with the majority of them scored over a 3 to 4 week window anytime during the season than 160 points from somebody else with between 6 and 12 points every week.
Yeah, that's really, really sharp. So you went over kind of what the format boosts. What about some of the hits in this format? Talk to me about some of those guys.
Yeah, so first guy we'll talk about, well, Christian McCaffrey, we talked about a little bit on the last session, and I think a lot of the things you hit on, his upside and kind of the bull case around him, make a ton of sense. For me, I have him lower on drafters, and a lot of it just comes down to it's a first round pick, and I think he's in a really good spot. I think that projecting injuries can be dicey, but also just where he's at. Um, you're not going to, you're not, it's a 17-week cumulative scoring. Every team has a bye week, so there's 16 games. I don't think you're going to win this tournament if you get 12 or 13 games out of a guy. And similar to what I talked about with Shipley, where it doesn't really matter where that window comes. If you get 12 or 13 weeks on DraftKings or Underdog, if those Christian McCaffrey, the weeks he misses, the 3 or 4 weeks he misses at some point, if they come anytime other than the playoffs, you're fine. Like, he's still probably going to be a high producer during the weeks that he's healthy during the regular season. And if he's healthy in the playoffs, you kind of are fine with it. But it's really hard, especially if you're passing on a wide receiver that early in the draft with drafters full PPR scoring. You take McCaffrey, you're hurting your wide receiver silos, and you're also at any point, if he misses some of that time, you're not going to probably be able to overcome that and actually win the tournament. So for me, there's a bump down on him. He's a guy that I probably need more separation on in my rankings. Like on DraftKings after our last talk, I'm probably coming up on him. And on drafters, I'm probably going to keep him where I'll take him at the 1-2 turn. Like if I can get him at 12 or 13, but he doesn't really fall that far anymore. But on DraftKings, I'll probably move him up to like the 6 or 7 range, depending on how I'm feeling. But that's the first one. And then we've already touched on him, but then the next one, which I'll let you hop in on this as well. Travis Hunter for the Jaguars, and he is dropping a little bit in ADP, kind of across all sites already. But really on drafters, I think it's a much bigger deal. All the things that we're hearing and kind of the uncertainty around him, because wherever his ADP settles, 5th round, 6th round, whatever it is, that is a high pick to be selecting on a guy who, like, we could get to the season and he could have some weeks where, like, what if he's only playing like 3rd down passing situations? What if the Jaguars are a lot better and frankly, like, they get to the point where it's like they're winning some games comfortably. Like if they're winning a game comfortably and they're playing, even if Hunter is playing on both sides of the ball, wouldn't it make sense? Like, okay, like we're going to limit his snap count this game. We're going to, that sort of thing. So on the cumulative scoring format, just a little more uncertainty than I'm looking for. So there's a big bump down for me on the drafters scoring format. I'll let you talk about what you like about him on Underdog.
Yeah, the single week upside, baby. And it is there in spades. We talked about the departure of Liam Cohen from Tampa when we were kind of talking about the backfield there. Well, Liam Cohen comes to the Jaguars. This is the quarterback whisperer. This is the guy who designed the offense that was Fantasyland's most valuable offense last year. And then the second aspect of that is one, kind of twofold. I expect Trevor Lawrence to have a career season. I expect this offense to be humming under Liam Cohen. And we look at the personnel and kind of what happened this offseason. They lose Evan Ingram. They lose Christian Kirk. They bring in De'Ami Brown, who really has been in the league 4 years now, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And hasn't really done anything outside of like that one playoff game, or was it week 18 last year? I can't remember.
He had a big wild card playoff game.
Yeah, that's what it
I
was.
remember because I took second in the $10
Yeah,
on DraftKings.
that's right. It's like really hasn't done anything outside of that game his entire season. So they have holdover Brenton Strange. They bring in just De'Ami Brown to kind of make up some of the perimeter snaps, and then they draft Travis Hunter at number 2 overall. If I expect this offense to be humming, it's probably not going through Brenton Strange. It's probably not going through De'Ami Brown. It's probably going through like Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter, like 2 guys who I regard as like legitimate NFL talents. That discussion of like where would Travis Hunter have gone if he were not playing defense in the NFL? Probably wouldn't have been 2 overall, but it probably would have been like the first wide receiver off the board still. So like, yeah, I don't know, man. I'm high on this offense. I don't see like where this offense is going to flow through outside of like Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter, and the backfield. So I'm kind of high on those 3 spots on this offense. If I'm high on the offense as a whole, kind of by necessity, like I have to be if I expect the offense to be improving. So that's kind of my bull case for him.
And I started with kind of the bear case on him, but also obviously I play on, I'm adjusting for format and kind of sinking my mind into where am I drafting, but like also we talk about like the injury stuff. We talked about CMC. We talked about we've talked about Shipley with Saquon Barkley and the windows of guys missing. But also from the standpoint of all of that, and we know Hunter is just wildly talented. And I talked about, okay, from a cumulative scoring format, what if they're winning games or whatever, and they decide, okay, we're not going to run him out there on offense as many snaps. We like to play the what if game at OWS. What if Brian Thomas Jr. gets hurt?
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, like, everything you just said is true, but like tenfold. And now it's like, okay, we have this guy that goes both ways. Well, like, our personnel now dictates that, like, he has to be the guy. He has to be like the engine of the offense. He is by like, if you remove Thomas for any length of time, Hunter is clearly their best offensive player. You can't have him playing defense, or, maybe it's just nickel stuff on defense, whatever. So they, it can go both ways with those sort of things. And I think on Underdog and DraftKings, those playoff style formats, the deeper you get in the season, maybe the more likely something like that could be to happen. And that single week upside, like if he's the engine of the offense, if Thomas is out, now all of a sudden you're talking about a guy he's probably like a top 6 to 8 wide receiver in the league. Thomas was a top 5 guy last season at the end of the year when he kind of became that guy. So if you just insert Hunter into that with a better offensive coordinator, as I'm talking about this, like I just want to go draft Travis Hunter on my DraftKings slow drafts.
Yes. And like draw a correlation to like Tampa's offense last year. It's like Mike Evans is kind of Brian Thomas Jr. Like Chris Godwin was like the slot guy and slot guy plus. That's what I expect Travis Hunter to kind of be. And we saw like routine top 12 weeks kind of rotating between Evans, Godwin until Godwin went down with injury. I think there's upside in this offense that is not being accounted for. And I think that it extends beyond just Brian Thomas Jr., who we know is a first-round pick this year. So that's where I'm at. You've got Burrow taking a hit in this format. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so I have Joe Burrow at around 70 in the rankings, and honestly, like, it feels about right. I think I could be a little lower on him even than that. The biggest thing is that I don't put quite the same emphasis on stacking across that 17-week season. He goes to take him at that 2-3 turn, or sorry, at the 4-5 turn, and pair him with Jamar Chase. Obviously, like, it's a great duo, but like, you look at the prices, we have to be, cost conscious when we're shopping, right? So last year, there was uncertainty around the Bengals. Chase was like a mid, sometimes late first rounder. Burrow was like an 8th or 9th rounder. So now, to expect them to hit that kind of that ceiling they hit last season, and then pay 101 for Chase and take Burrow at the 4-5 turn on drafters in the cumulative scoring, like, you're passing often on Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts at the quarterback position. And so that 1 week correlation that you're chasing in the playoff formats just isn't quite as important. Whereas, like, if Chase has a 45-point game at some point in the playoffs, like, you probably need Burrow too. And frankly, like, if that happens, and we talked about the importance of those early round picks, if that happens in the playoff format with Jamar Chase, there's going to be so many other Jamar Chase teams that have Joe Burrow that if you don't, it's going to be hard to get out of your playoff pod in week 15 or 16, and basically impossible to win it in week 17 if that's when Chase has the massive game, because there will just be a lot of Chase teams that do take Burrow. So for me, eliminating that aspect, now I look at the season long kind of projection and kind of where things work out in the draft, and some of the guys, Olave and Kamara and Connor that I'm higher on in the drafters format. I would rather take them in that 5th, 6th round before Burrow. If he gets back to me at the 6, 7 turn, then I'll consider it. But that's kind of my whole thought process around him.
Yeah, that's a very interesting spot, and I was interested to hear kind of what you had to say about it, because Joe Burrow is kind of the last of the elites in the quarterback tiers. I would put him. He's quarterback 5 by ADP, and I have 5 quarterbacks in that elite tier. Once you get beyond Burrow, we're kind of into this, like, I have a massive tier 2 at quarterback. And it includes a lot of names, but one of the guys, or there's 2 guys in this format that I have above consensus in that tier 2, one of which you have below in this drafters format. So I'm interested to hear now about Bo Nix and your reasoning for that.
Yeah, so for me, again, he is part of there's kind of a big group of quarterbacks. And like, for me, you look at the cumulative nature of the scoring. I'm fairly high on the Denver backfield. I think their backfield's going to be a lot better this season. And frankly, there's just such a depth of QBs available after him, that he's just not a guy that I am looking to target in a specific way. You also, on DraftKings and Underdog, correlation, obviously week 17 correlations are important and that sort of thing. So, like, you have these aspects of ADP and things moving. I'm going to try not to go too deep into the weeds here, but you have the dynamic of the 8-9 turn around pick like 96, 97, where if you can get Burrow there, that's often correlated with where Cortland Sutton goes at the 4-5 around the 4-5 turn. So you can get that correlation. You might be pairing him with, they play the Chiefs week 17, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
Rashee Rice as like a 2-3 round pick. So now you might have a Nick Sutton, Rice, a correlation play there. Same with like Evan Ingram. You can often like double tap, get Nicks and Ingram right at that 8-9 turn. And those correlations play a lot into it. Whereas like for me, I look at drafters, and that's where when I go through my rankings and start thinking about things on drafters, that's one of the main things I look for is how many of these guys are ranked where they are, because it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense to draft them at certain spots. And so the ADP moves on DraftKings and Underdog. And then how much of that on drafters is just being like carried over, because this is where I draft him on this site. So I'm drafting him there on this site as well. Nick's, I think he's going to be a steady contributor. He's going to have solid weeks, week in and week out is kind of my projection. I don't know that he's a guy that I'm seeing a ton of spike weeks throughout the season, but he does have that in him. I just don't think that we'll see a ton of them. So that's kind of where I'm at. There's some other guys that I would just prefer, Dak Prescott, JJ McCarthy, Justin Herbert types, often going like 2 or 3 rounds later.
Yeah, that's fair. Coming from like a single week, spike week potential type, this Sean Payton, Joe Lombardi offense with this offensive line that is ranked top 3 no matter where you look, typically going second or third as far as 2025 entry level offensive line ranks. And then they go out, they draft Pat Bryant, they bring in Evan Ingram, they have a boost in the backfield with RJ Harvey in the second round. They have, hopefully we see Marvin Mims more involved. Damn it. This guy is so talented. Led the league in yards after the catch per reception last year. Get this guy on the field. Anyway, this offense is going to be able to stress opposing defenses top to bottom. The other side of that is like their defense is not too shabby as well. So they could probably win games a lot of different ways. So I don't hate that you have Bo Nix below consensus in this format. And then I also don't hate that like I have him above consensus in a single playoff style format, single week type upside through that type of lens. So yeah, that was good stuff. I was interested to hear what you had to say about him.
For sure.
Do you want to talk about Scattaboo? Do you want to talk about Cooper Kupp?
Sure. I'll try to go a little quicker through these, but yeah, Cam Scatterbo, the Giants, he's a 4th round pick, kind of a fan favorite, a bit of an overachiever. He does a little bit of everything. I think he like punted the ball a couple times. He threw some passes, like, that's all cute, but to me, it's like the Giants, like Tommy DeVito thing, like, easy to root for, all that sort of thing. But like at the end of the day, not an offense I'm super excited about. I think Tyrone Tracy probably a better pass catcher, more explosive. And just especially in this format, right? Like I could see a scenario where like maybe he pays off being that like 9th or 10th round pick that he currently is. If he hits the right window, if later in the season they just roll with him, that sort of thing. He has, we talked about the windows of like, guys spike throughout the year where they'll have like a 4 or 5 week, really nice window. I don't quite see the upside. There's just too much. Like I'm not sold. I'm not overly hyped on him from like his athletic profile and draft profile. And I'm not sold. And then it's not the greatest situation. I am pretty high on Tyrone Tracy. So just a guy who I'm not overly enthusiastic about as from the player standpoint. And then on an offense that it's hard for me to see a path to them being like a top half NFL offense. So for me, he's just basically like, I've basically got him ranked in a spot where I'm just never going to draft him.
Yeah, I am the same. So maybe format agnostic on the Scattaboo. The Giants are currently projected by Mike Clay to score 331 points this season. That's bottom 5 in the league. Uncertainties at quarterback: Jackson Dart, Russell Wilson. Who's going to be? Is it going to be Russell Wilson to start and then Jackson Dart? Probably, but we don't know. It's split backfield, not the best offensive scheme design there. Brian Dable kind of gets another shot. I don't know how many shots he's going to get here. But at some point, I think Brian Dable probably is a coach that is in the hot seat. We talked last episode about some coaches that shouldn't be or probably aren't in Shane Steichen and Mike McDaniel. I think Dabbs is probably on the hot seat this year. I don't see him getting off of that bad boy either without some headache. I'm below on Scatabo kind of across all formats as well. What do you see in Cooper Kupp? Is it he is old and on a new team?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, he's older. It's cumulative scoring. So like, again, just based on, and credit, one of my favorite players to watch. Like, he's super impressive. His technique, the way he approaches his craft, he's been tough. He's taken some shots, and just kept playing. But I think he's an overachiever, easy to root for. He's played at the highest level. Like, he was the best receiver in the game for a time period. But like, it just seems like his body is, hitting a breaking point where in a cumulative scoring format, it's hard for me to see him kind of surviving the marathon of the NFL season without at some point either being like he was at the end of last year, significantly impaired, where he's not the player that you think of when you see the name, or just he misses a 4 to 7 week window or something, and that's a lot of time to lose a single digit pick for in the cumulative scoring format. So it's also a little bit of a function of my overall draft strategy and how I approach things on drafters, and then kind of who's available from some of these other positions, kind of when he is often going off the board. So it's just kind of a conglomerate of things. And I'll dive into that probably a little bit more this week on our premium podcast for the Best Ball Plus subscribers. But yeah, I think, obviously, in DraftKings, we talk about a little bit, like, I think from a single week perspective, like, it wouldn't shock me if at some point we saw a game like, it was week 1 last year, right, against the Lions, when he caught like 15 passes. Right away, because then he got hurt as like mega chalk week 2. But like, it wouldn't shock me if like there's a couple games this year where Seattle's trailing, JSN is either hurt or just getting like all the defense's attention, and he just gets peppered and has this massive like 12 for 120 and a touchdown, with full PPR and a bonus on DraftKings. Like, I actually kind of really like him on that format. But drafters that cumulative scoring, there's just a little more risk than I'm willing to take on for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. I like that thought process a good deal. We're going to transition real quick to underdog. We're not going to take as much time because we've talked about a lot of these guys already, and my internet issues kind of forced Mike to talk a lot at the beginning. So sorry about that. Still trying to work those out, trying to get those.
He spoke it into existence.
What's up, fam?
Okay.
I think Mike, we are back, but Mike said I spoke it into existence. My internet cut out right as I was talking about it. So I will get these issues cleaned up. Might have to change companies because this ain't working. But I'm going to run us through some boosts that I have on Underdog, some hits that I have on Underdog. We've talked a lot about these guys already, so most of them. So we're not going to spend as much time. We'll just take 5 minutes, finish us out here with some quick thoughts. I boost CMC for the format. Obviously, single week, spike week potential is a big deal to us, particularly for those weeks 15 to 17. So CMC gets that boost for me. We talked about Tyreek Hill, but I will add Jalen Waddle as well. And interestingly enough, right as we were recording this on the 30th Monday, Jonnu Smith was traded. So that was interesting timing. But I wanted to add a discussion quickly on Jalen Waddle. We saw his targets per route run. We saw his average depth of target, all things that we kind of measure a wide receiver's efficiency. We saw those massively boosted with Tua Tagovailoa last season and massively take a hit without him. So with a healthy Tua heading into the season for that single spike week potential, Jalen Waddle gets a slight boost on underdog as well. One guy that we did not touch on yet, but we talked about his offense, and that's the Chicago Bears, is Roschon Johnson. This is a guy that I think is boostable, irrespective or what, depending on whatever, or doesn't matter what format you're playing on. Roschon Johnson, I think, has the potential to be kind of the Bears version of David Montgomery. We saw David Montgomery score 12 or more touchdowns in consecutive seasons playing in Detroit. I think Roschon Johnson, we already kind of saw him be kind of the goal line back, short yardage guy last year. DeAndre Swift, undersized back. I expect Roschon Johnson to have at least the path to a double-digit touchdown type year playing for Ben Johnson there in Chicago. So high on Roschon Johnson. I think the spike week potential is aided by that touchdown potential in 0.5 PPR. Would not shock me for him to see one or two multiple touchdown weeks this year. If those happen in weeks 15 to 17, you're sitting pretty. We talked about Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter, but again, that spike week potential aspect is the reasoning for why I have them ranked so far above consensus. Any quick down and dirty thoughts on those boosts for the format, Mike?
No, yeah, I concur. And like you said, a couple of those guys we had talked about prior. I like the Roschon call a lot. You look at Ben Johnson, Jamal Williams led the NFL in touchdowns a couple of years ago. David Montgomery consistently a double-digit touchdown guy. DeAndre Swift, really, that's not kind of his profile.
Mm-hmm.
And they only brought in Kyle Monange with the seventh round.
Seventh rounder, yeah.
Only running back that they added. They passed on guys like Dobbins and Chubb and those types that would maybe I think a lot of people were kind of waiting on them to add somebody. But yeah, I think Roschon, he could be a smash at ADP, but especially in that 0.5 PPR format, very rare you can get a guy in like the 13th, 14th round that like he could have it's not shocking if he has a 2 or 3 touchdown week, right?
Yeah.
It's not like a crazy story you have to tell to see it on that 0.5 PPR format. Makes a ton of sense. One other guy you had listed as a UD boost, we talked about him a little bit before, was DJ Moore. I am higher on him. I'll say I am higher on him on that underdog in DraftKings because something we talked about with correlation. You can get him. Often you can pair him with a CMC who is going, late in the first round. So like Moore is a guy I often target early in the 4th round. Whereas I'm kind of lukewarm on him in the drafters format. But, if you tell that story about the Chicago-San Francisco game in week 17, I have that right? They play each other.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then on the flip side of it, you've got Jawan Jennings. You could pair him with Kittle. You could take Moore and Kittle at the 3-4 turn. And Jawan Jennings is like a 5-6 turn guy. So Moore just opens up a lot for you. And his skill set, like that Commanders game a couple of years ago, he had like a 50-point game in PPR. So like, he's a guy that if I draft him, I want it to be where the spike week, if it comes at the right time, is worth a lot. And there's a lot of options to correlate him with how the ADPs fall. So big boost for him on underdog, probably on DraftKings as well.
And then there's a common theme for the guys that take a big hit for me in this format, and that's like the touchdown expectation / projection / potential. Guys like Ashton Jeanty, guys like JSN, DK Metcalf, Calvin Ridley, Alvin Kamara, Quinshon Judkins. These guys that are on offenses that are currently projected to be bottom 10 units, that whether or not they're the alpha, whether or not we expect them to get a massive workload, aka Ashton Jeanty, the touchdown upside is our path to those massive spike weeks. And these guys are just kind of lacking that as far as their profile goes. So those guys take a significant hit for me on Underdog, where we're looking for that single week spike week potential. Any guys you want to quickly add to that, or off the top of your head, or you disagree with there?
No, yeah, and I think Metcalf, you know, obviously you wrote this down prior, but even the Jonnu Smith edition just kind of drives that home as well.
Yeah.
You know, I think he's a big body and like in theory, like should be a better touchdown scorer, I think, than he is. But at the same time, like you know, Jonnu Smith, they can kind of manufacture touches too. You know, I don't Rodgers notoriously doesn't try to like force the ball into certain areas, and it's not like Metcalf is like creating huge separation as a route runner. And then Arthur Smith, you know,
Yep.
he's not gonna, he doesn't force the ball to anybody. So, you know, from those standpoints, yeah, it totally makes sense to me to be kind of lower on him, even if he gets there to 130, 140 targets over the course of a season. It's hard to see like, you know, that single week upside quite being the same there. I would say, you know, another kind of ding that I have with regards to the single week format, I guess, would just be, sorry, I had it pulled up. The J.K. Dobbins, he's getting a lot of energy right now. I struggle to see him, if he gets a big role. I struggle to see him staying healthy throughout the whole course of the season.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't get the big role, now you're kind of paying for it. He's kind of becoming like a 10th or 11th round pick right now. So,
Yeah.
you know, he's a guy that, again, the more he plays, you know, just given his history, yeah, I'm a little bit less enthusiastic about him, especially, you know, for when all the money's late in the season.
Yeah, a corollary I will draw to J.K. Dobbins is 2 years ago, Jerick McKinnon, where he was undrafted and then he re-signs with the Chiefs and then he jumps up to the 10th, 11th round.
Yeah.
It's kind of what we're seeing with J.K. Dobbins, and we saw what happened with that, an aging back with injury issues. Yeah, didn't work out so well. I'm with you there. That's going to do it for us for today. We talked a lot about the format and what adjustments we make, what differences, but based on where we're drafting. Again, this was part 2. If you missed part 1, it's up on YouTube. Go check that out. And biggest thing, price drop yesterday, by the time you're listening to this, July 1st, price drop for the OWS Best Ball product, the OWS Best Ball Basics for $29, the Best Ball Plus for $79. And with the Best Ball Plus, you get access to those one-on-one training sessions with Mike and myself. So head on over there to oneweekseason.com, check out the Best Ball and the Best Ball Plus products. And until next time, y'all, this was a blast, but we will see you in the draft lobbies. Cannot wait to see you at the top of the leaderboards.
1 week season.